We are now transiting to yet another segment of the show. And of course, speaking on the planned fuel subsidy removal by federal government, the federal government of Nigeria through the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning has said that fuel subsidy removal is yet to be suspended. A statement by the Minister's Special Advisor, Media and Communication, Yunusa Abdullahi, indicated that the federal government planned to expand the Subsidy Removal Committee to include state governors and teams from the incoming administration. In an earlier report, the Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed said the National Economic Council agreed that the subsidy must be removed now rather than later, as the nation could not afford it anymore. She said, and I quote, Council agreed that the fuel subsidy must be removed earlier rather than later because it is not sustainable. We cannot afford it anymore. But what we have to do in such a way is to impact the subsidy is mitigated on the lives of ordinary Nigerians. End of quote. And of course, joining us to discuss this issue right about now is our guest, and the person of Mr. Shode Peter. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning.
All right. So looking at the subject matter we're discussing, first and foremost, I do not want to be a bearer of bad news, but we've got to be very much realistic here. The history of fuel subsidy removal has had a long history dating back to October 2000, when, of course, we could no longer be able to sustain the economy going by the way we were due to the fact that supply were not inadequate given the 4 refineries that we have. Now we found ourselves in November 2021 when the issue of fuel subsidy was about to be removed and of course replaced with a 5,000 naira monthly transport that would cushion the effect of the hardship Nigerians would go through. I must tell you for a fact, I never saw even one person that would say that he was a beneficiary of that particular scheme. Now we're in 2023, yet another fuel subsidy. My question to you is this, it's a 2-question in one. How much confidence can the new administration coming on board instill in Nigerians to make them believe that this is not a disaster waiting? And of course, the next question would be, what will be the impact this would have on our Petroleum Act?
Okay, first things first, we need to have a common ground on the petroleum subsidy itself. We all need to agree that it is bad economics. Just like the finance minister said, it is not sustainable. You see, it is bad when you say you are subsidizing a product like a PMS. Diesel is left on its own, fully deregulated. And at the end of the day, you see, because of the common people, the masses. And these same masses are telling you, I cannot feel whatever you say you are doing. Any little shake in the market of petrol, I am at the receiving end. Once transporters increase their price, it never comes down. So anytime you tell me subsidy, 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 I don't get to understand what you're saying. So it now becomes sacrilege, a disaster, when you are borrowing to finance this subsidy. That means you are borrowing for consumption and not for production. It's just like somebody going to a bank in Nigeria and say, give me money. And they ask you, what do you want to use the money to do? I just want to eat.
Or pay school fees.
How do you pay back? Pay school fees, how do you pay back? So that is what the country is currently doing. You have a budget proposal in 2023 of about 20.3 trillion, about 21 trillion budget. And you are able to say, I have a revenue that I can generate for myself. 9.5 trillion. No, 9.7 trillion is what the government is able to generate. And most of your earnings are even from this same sector, the oil sector. About 60 to 70% of the government revenue comes from there. And that sector alone is inefficient. Almost through the end of last year, Nigeria was doing about 900,000 barrels per day instead of about 1.8, 1.9 that OPEC approved for us to do. And what would you hear? Stolen crude. People are stealing. So, the 9 trillion budget the government has for that particular revenue that they have, the performance is not guaranteed. It is not sure that the government will earn that 9 trillion to finance a budget of over 20 trillion. So the next thing is a deficit in between of 10.7 trillion. So how do you finance this 10.7 trillion? Remember, you already have a debt profile of about over 44 trillion, all governments of the Federation. There is another 23 thereabout CBN ways and means. If you combine those two together, you're already over 70 trillion. So now you want to add a deficit of another 10 trillion to it. To be sincere to you, it is not sustainable. Nigeria will go bankrupt if we continue. Subsidy around 2013, is it 2003 or 2013, was about 300 and something billion every year. But between January and June this year that the government had made a provision, they had made 3 trillion. So that means if subsidy does not stop by this June, government will have to borrow another 3 trillion again. And all these things you are borrowing, it's not because you are financing a project that you can earn money, like maybe a railway that people will come and pay, maybe a road that there will be toll gate, people will come and pay so that you can pay back those loans. You are just borrowing the money to finance consumption. So at the end of the day, what happens? Government will borrow those loans and say, okay, like the $800 million that is supposed to be used
I was going to come
for intervention, the social investment program. The end date is about 2051. So that means the government now is borrowing against unborn children. We will all pay, if we live till 2051, we will still be paying that money.
My question is, how many Nigerians would receive that particular allowance or whatever you call it that will cushion the effect of the hardship? And what is the parameter? Because we have never seen transparency, accountability on how this money is shared to the Nigerians. What is the parameter, by the way?
I think the issue is, the parameter is clear. The World Bank has said, if you remove subsidy, I will help you. I know your people, because inflation is already at 22.04%. If you remove subsidy, we expect that it will just shoot up to as high as over 40%. And price of petrol used to be pegged between 500 and 700. That's about 400%. So the World Bank that is giving you the loan has seen that, okay, there'll be a problem. We know. So tell us, who are your poor and vulnerable people in this country? We would give you loans in installments. In fact, the $800 million is just the first tranche. It's a 2-year program.
Okay.
So if you multiply 800 by 4, that's about 3.2 trillion. That's $3.2 billion that the World Bank wants to give to Nigeria. So, and it's a program that has been done in Kenya, Namibia, India, whereby when they give these monies to farmers, they buy equipment, hose, cutlasses. Before you know anything, they start leaving that poor register. New people come because with their equipment, they don't need loan from their community banks or their cooperative banks. They move. It has helped a whole lot of people. So maybe because it is working elsewhere. So Nigeria too. Let's see whether if we give these guys 5,000 naira per month. It's targeted at 10 million households. 10 million households, about 50 million individuals. Okay, if we give them this money consistently for 6 months, another 6 months we'll do another one, that it will. We have seen all the ones that has been done, Shwopi, Empower,
trader money.
trader money, everything.
And how successful
at the end of
has this
they were not
program
successful.
been? Because, I mean, George, how
So
much do you spend on
first things
transport?
first is
now the
your
5,000.
your social register. That register that you said you have the name of 10 million people. Look at it. For example, during Corona, the government said I was running school feeding program. Children were home, and people are asking, how did you feed them till tomorrow? So there's this trust deficit within the government that has made the public not to trust anything that has to do with the social investment programs that they operate. Because if I don't know, you don't know, he does not know, so who knows anybody who is on that register that has ever received any of these monies? So the new government, what it needs to do is to try to bring back that trust, that confidence. It is doable.
Mr.
If it can be done in countries like
Mr.
India.
You've not answered my question.
What exactly?
My question is, what is the parameter to identify those that are indigent, the poor Nigerians? Because this 5,000 naira, are you giving it to people who will be transporting themselves to their place of work, or you are giving it to people who are jobless, or you're giving it to farmers?
Yes, you see.
Who are these persons?
In the document that the government signed, they said it has to be the poor and the vulnerable. Because of that, they marked about 7% of the total sum for logistics. You have to have a national coordinating office for that program, state coordinating offices. So there are officers who are not government officials that were employed by these coordinating offices for this program that goes to the hinterlands. Okay, who are the poor people in this local government? They enumerate all the areas in the local government, get your poor, put them in the register from local government to state to federal. So at a point in time, it became a political matter where you see people of these political parties are just the ones on that list or on that. You see, this is Nigeria. You can never say this is about. World Bank has said this is how you should go. Have all these states, have all these offices in your local, in your ward, from your ward to your local government to your state government up to the federal, so you have a combined list. At every point in time, we will know that okay, there are 10,000 people in Kwara local government or Wadi local government that are on this schedule.
But how feasible do you think this is? Because you just mentioned that this is Nigeria.
There will be political sentiment.
Exactly.
You just said that.
Yes,
how
every state,
feasible
because
do
you
you
see,
think
it
this
is in the hands of every state, especially their governors, to generate who exactly are the poor and vulnerable. Not because you are going to work or anything. For the people going to work, government has said, okay, I'll do mass transit for you guys. I'll buy buses. In fact, Lagos State government just do delivery of electric buses, if you have heard that.
Yes.
Part of the whole stuff. So the government has plans that, okay, I will do A. They have said we'll increase basic salaries by 40% effective this month. I think they won't pay arrears. So they're also preparing. It's not as if they are doing anything. But for that particular project, they said the beneficiaries are the poor and the vulnerable in your economy. People who will not be able to buy that fuel at 400 or 500 or 600 naira. People that are in the hinterlands. Those are the people that qualify to benefit.
When you mentioned that the government is also preparing, Lagos State government buying electronic buses and other state governors doing whatever they're doing that we don't know about. But do you not think that it has become important to, get to the point where this soreness is coming from in the first place? The fact that we have so much oil at our disposal and we're not able to refine any of them. So we need to export and then import and then export again and then import. It shouldn't be these preparations, shouldn't a very great, part of it be fixing our refineries, getting professionals to do the professional part of this job, so that even if we're buying these electronic buses, let's say we're buying it for the space of 2 years, we know that after these 2 years, we are ready to have our own production, get things in place so that we don't need to get all these loans and, stay stuck and be generating bad publicity for Nigeria.
I think those refineries, if I'm not making a mistake, are as old as I am. Because while Obasanjo was president, I think Buhari was a petroleum minister, built some of those refineries. So they are not less than 40 years old. So whatever you had done 40 years back, especially in a country like Nigeria with almost zero maintenance culture, I don't think it is.
But they were
be useful. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't think it would be useful to serve today's purpose. In fact, I think it's better to build new refineries than to, because since democracy, not once, not twice, not thrice have you heard about turnaround maintenance on Port Harcourt refinery, on Warri refinery, on Kaduna refinery. At the end, it will just work for 1 month. And what happens? Backs up again. You see, we cannot manage, government cannot manage business in this country because of corruption. So the best we can do is to let government hands off and the private sector. Look at Nigeria Airways. You find out that public officials, politicians were giving their friends and families tickets. That's how Nigeria Airways died. Civil management. So the best you can do is to look for private sector to run it. A public-private partnership. That is the model that can work for in Nigeria. I'm not saying go and pump money. Let them pump. This last year, we know how much was pumped into Port Harcourt refinery. The Minister of State for Petroleum, Professor Silva, was telling us that by the first or second quarter, Port Harcourt refinery will start giving us petrol. Till today, the government is going nothing. So it is just like you are sinking money, trying to say go and upgrade our. It's just a waste of time. Let the government create that enabling environment. You can see that a whole lot of modular refineries, Dangote, Bua, they are coming upstream. So hopefully, government should support the private sector to make sure that there is a good template for them to run. Because trying to say government should now put money in all those things, it will be a failure. It won't do anything different. Because at the end of the day, by the time they want to appoint people into positions in all those refineries, you know who they will appoint.
All right, Josh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was about going there, but I think we need to just go for a quick break, and then when we return, we'll be wrapping up with him. Please do stay with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course we still have our guest in the person of Mr. Sugar Peters, who has been giving us his analysis on the matter. But before we wrap up with him on this show, he's got to address one or two issues that has to do with the issue you talked about before we went on break, going into getting a brand new refineries as against maintaining or restructuring the old one. Now my question to you is this: there's a property you want to buy, for instance, and the property does not in any way meet your taste. Looking at demolishing that structure as against probably refurbishing it or renovating it, which is cost effective, just opposing it to your earlier comment as against getting a new refinery?
Yeah, it depends actually on what your aim and objectives are. Face by face is also an apartment. A one-story building is also a building. But if you have bought a face me I face you, and in your mind this is 2023, that face me I face you was built in year 1900. So, but because it is in Mangodo, you have bought it, you cannot use the same structure or the same foundation to carry the load of what you want to be built in 2023. You want a 4-bedroom duplex, but you bought a face me I face you. Of course, you need to pull it down. All those refineries that you see, in fact, the people that built them, some of them are no longer in business. Even if they are in business, they have moved on to new things. Different engineering, different electricity type, different fueling type. A whole lot of things have changed. So trying to continue to is just like an old cloth. You patch it here, before you know it, it exposes itself here. You patch it here, then of course it gives way in another place. So the best is to Actually, how much does it cost to build? This is in China and some countries, they build kilometers of roads in a month. During Corona, China built, is it about 200 bed spaces in 10 days? They can set up a refinery. It's not rocket
So you
science.
think it's cost effective for them to set up brand new as against maintaining
set
the
up
old
brand
one?
new, but not the government this time around.
All right, I
the
think
government
that's.
should not be involved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shirinde, Peter, for coming on the show. Really appreciate
Yeah,
your time.
thanks for having me.
All right, the show is not over yet, but we'll be transiting yet to another segment of the show. And when we return, it's going to be issues on finance. Please don't go anywhere.